Tonight, party campaigns go full bore with 1 weekend left until Canadians make their decision.
I'm asking for your vote to stand up to Donald Trump.
Everything is at stake. This election is about change.
Where they're heading, what they're saying, how voters are feeling. With tariffs coming from the south, gathering support to move Canadian energy east and west.
Canada can be the #1 exporter of LNG to Asia.
The heated debate over liquefied natural gas.
Judge?
A new escalation in the U.S. conflict between the presidency and the courts.
I think some of these judges think they are beyond and above the law.
This is about striking fear in the heart of the judiciary.
How the arrest of a judge both applies the law and sends a message.
From CBC News, this is The National with Erica Johnson.
Thank you for joining us. Well, it's here, the final weekend of a lightning-paced federal election race. Just 2 full days of campaigning left before Canadians etch their future in pencil on ballots across the country. They are hearing the closing arguments, whether promises of change or of standing up to Donald Trump, brought by leaders employing last-ditch strategies, whether their party appears to be leading or appears to have ground to make up. For all of them, the clock is quickly running down. You'll get the news from all of them now, starting with Ashley Burke, traveling with the Liberals, who spent the day in Ontario and plan to campaign there again tomorrow.
All right, guys, it's just dropping in.
Mark Carney and Sault Ste. Marie visiting a steel plant that's ground zero for Donald Trump's trade war.
Regardless of which party you voted for in the past, I'm asking for your vote to stand up to Donald Trump.
The Liberal leader in Ontario hammering home his message. He's the one to take on Trump and help workers.
The tariffs are very concerning to our company and our workers. The steel market has been impacted by the U.S. tariffs.
But Carney was asked again about his call last month with the U.S. president after he acknowledged that he'd left out the fact that Trump brought up Canada becoming a 51st state.
Mark Carney wasn't being totally straight up with us.
A source now says Carney also told Trump he was a transformative president because of his impact on the global economy.
What's most important in a discussion, a meeting, is the conclusions of the meeting. The conclusions of this discussion with the president were clear, that he respected Canada as a sovereign country.
Carney's focus now locking in votes in Ontario.
The GTA in particular has to go hard to the Liberals if any party is going to win a majority, including Mr. Carney.
He's targeting Liberal ridings his party's fighting to hold and seats he hopes to take from the NDP, all while attacking his Conservative rival.
Unlike Pierre Poilievre, I have managed budgets before. I have managed economies before. I have managed crises before.
Carney keeps saying he wants a strong mandate, his focus to draw a clear distinction between himself and Pierre Poilievre, rejecting Poilievre's claim that he's just like Justin Trudeau.
Ashley, you're with the campaign now in London, Ontario. What's the aim there?
There are dueling rallies here tonight. We're in a riding the Liberals hope to take from the NDP, but Jagmeet Singh's putting up a fight. He's holding his own rally not far from here.
Ashley Burke in London, Ontario. As this race nears the finish line, the Conservatives are spending a lot of time in areas that are usually pretty safe bets. As JP Tasker explains, that move is being questioned, including by some inside Pierre Poilievre's campaign.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is rallying his base in the final days of this election.
People of the prairies and all across the West deserve to be a fair and full part of our country for a change.
Campaigning in deep blue territory with stops in Alberta and Saskatchewan, drawing huge crowds as he pushes a dark message about what could happen to Canada if the Liberals win again.
Everything is at stake. This election is about change. This Liberal path not only means more poverty and hunger and helplessness and homelessness, but it also means more divisions in our country.
The decision to stop in safe seats is raising eyebrows among some Conservative campaign staffers who spoke to CBC News. 2 of them say the party should be making a play for swing voters elsewhere with so little time left before Monday's election.
The challenge, of course, for the Conservatives is that they were in pole position 4 months ago. The script has completely flipped.
This pollster says the Liberals are poised to make gains on the prairies and in BC. Poilievre's Western focus, as time ticks down, shows he wants to stop the bleeding, she says.
If you're Pierre Poilievre, you are going to be out here fighting for every single vote and trying to pick up or hold every single riding you've got.
There are a few things that I'd like to see change, but I don't think there's a perfect candidate right now.
Some voters in BC say they're tired of the Liberals. Others worry Poilievre is too similar to U.S. President Donald Trump.
I think a lot of Canadians are not up for that. And so I think that people are going to be surprised with how heavily the whole country votes Liberal, including Western provinces.
The voters here in battleground BC could be kingmakers in this election. If the Conservatives hold ground here, they could block the Liberal path to a majority government. JP Tasker, CBC News, Vancouver.
Elsewhere on the campaign trail, the NDP and Bloc Québécois are also racing to secure votes, and Jagmeet Singh is defending his decision to keep the Liberal government alive for as long as he did. Marina von Stackelberg starts there.
I'm Marina von Stackelberg covering the NDP campaign. Leader Jagmeet Singh is on his final push for votes in Southern Ontario and is standing behind his decision to not trigger this election sooner. The New Democrats supported the Liberals for more than 2 years in return for programs like dental and pharmacare. Last fall, Singh ripped up the agreement. The NDP threatened to vote down the minority government, but never did. Singh says it was because he couldn't stomach the idea of a Conservative majority government. He says he was also buying more time so Canadians could start to receive the health benefits the NDP had fought for. He felt that would make it harder for any future government to take them away. But criticism of Singh's decision to keep the Liberals afloat has followed him, while leader Mark Carney is literally following Singh's campaign route. Both are now in London, Ontario, as Carney makes a move for NDP supporters.
I'm Rafi Boudjikanian covering the Bloc Québécois in Victoriaville between Montreal and Quebec City in one of those rare Quebec ridings that voted for the Conservatives in the last election. But their MP eventually left that party and is not running again, which gives the Bloc some hope. Leader Yves-Francois also got some last-minute assistance. Late yesterday, the popular leader of the provincial Parti Québécois published a letter calling Liberal Mark Carney an existential threat to Quebec, tearing into the Liberals' immigration policies and the deficits they've run, and endorsing Blanchet. Tomorrow, Blanchet goes to Val d'Or in the north to a riding that represents his challenge across this province, trying to save a Bloc seat from a Liberal newcomer.
So just 3 days from the election, where do the parties stand? For that, we turn to the CBC News poll tracker, which averages all the latest polling. Since before the election was called more than a month ago, support for the Bloc and especially the NDP has sagged, while the Liberals surged ahead of the Conservatives. In recent days, the gap between the two has closed somewhat. And based on that polling data and seat projections, if an election were held today, the poll tracker puts the chance of a Liberal government at 90%, most likely a majority government. With me now, Chief Political Correspondent Rosemary Barton. So, Rosie, the polls suggest an apparently durable Liberal lead. What would it take to change the race at this point?
Listen, Erica, there probably have to be days or weeks added to the election calendar for things to change really dramatically at this point. What has made this race remarkable throughout remains true at the end. This is still very much a race between two parties, the Liberals and the Conservatives. And the smaller parties remain very squeezed. The lack of support for both the NDP and the Bloc Québécois has largely benefited the Liberals. And so though the Conservatives have high support, still it makes it much more challenging for them to find a path to victory here, given that support is concentrated in fewer regions. So if the NDP support was to increase, if the Bloc continues to gain a little bit in these coming days, that would help break the vote up enough to allow for the Conservatives to gain more seats. Those things could still happen in the final days, but the trend line hasn't moved very much since the beginning.
And now we're entering the end game. What are you going to be watching for?
Well, as journalists on the campaigns told you, geography really important in these final days because campaigns decide where to send leaders based on the likelihood of holding or picking up a new riding. So that can help us understand what the parties think of their chances. The other thing is tone. If leaders start to worry they're not going to get the outcome they want, they will sharpen their messages, and sometimes that can mean becoming much more aggressive in their attacks on one another. Lots of risks in that move, obviously, but these final days are about persuasion, and they will do that any way they can.
Thanks for this, Rosie. Rosemary Barton in Toronto. And a reminder, CBC has you covered on election night. Our Canada Votes coverage begins Monday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 Pacific, wherever you watch CBC News. Just days after it started, an Ontario judge declared a mistrial in the case against 5 former Canadian World Junior hockey players. They're accused of sexually assaulting a woman in 2018. Katie Nicholson now with more on what happens next.
A false start to the high-profile trial of 5 former World Junior hockey stars. Dylan Dubé, Cal Foote, Alex Formanton, Carter Hart, and Michael McLeod all pleaded not guilty to sexual assault charges stemming from an alleged incident in June of 2018. Just days after it began, Superior Court Justice Maria Carosia declared a mistrial and dismissed the jury. The trial had been on pause since Wednesday when a matter arose midway through the day. The reason for the ruling is protected by an automatic publication ban. Mistrials are rare, but they do happen.
It's essentially meant to be a safeguard against a possible miscarriage of justice.
Western University law professor Christopher Sharon says the decision to declare a mistrial can be seen as a reason to trust the system.
Well, I actually think a declaration of a mistrial should actually give the public reason to have faith in the administration of justice because something went wrong and the court has responded in a way that presumably ensures the integrity of the proceedings going forward.
You have such a big case and it happens so soon in the case. I think that's probably something that's going to cause a lot of hype.
Defense lawyer Sam Puhala says it's probably best it happened now.
It's better to have a mistrial declared on day 1 than day 40 to give time to proceed to the next steps.
The court wasted no time getting a new jury, 14 jurors, 9 women, 5 men, and 2 alternates, 1 man, 1 woman, selected by end of day Friday in hopes the new trial can begin on Monday. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, London, Ontario.
A 32-year-old Ontario man has been arrested by the RCMP. He allegedly tried to leave Canada to join a terrorist organization. Both his identity and the group involved are under a publication ban. The suspect remains in custody. Former U.S. Congressman George Santos has been sentenced to over 7 years in prison for identity theft and fraud.
Confidence? Do you have anything to say?
Santos lied about his background and defrauded New York voters and donors to get into office. He faced nearly a dozen charges and pleaded guilty to 2 last year. Prosecutors say he made a mockery of the election system. The FBI has arrested a sitting Milwaukee judge, accusing her of obstructing a deportation arrest. As Paul Hunter explains, whatever the evidence, this marks a new escalation in the emerging fight between the Trump administration and the courts.
Judge, anything to say about this?
Leaving the courthouse after her arrest, Milwaukee Judge Hannah Dugan said nothing. Accused by federal authorities of obstructing or impeding a proceeding of the United States. In this case, that Dugan tried to prevent immigration agents in the courthouse from arresting and deporting this man, Eduardo Flores Ruiz, as part of a U.S. crackdown on illegal migrants.
You're not going to believe this. Takes the defendant and the defense attorney back in her chambers, takes them out a private exit and tells them to leave.
The U.S. Attorney General slamming Dugan and other judges, suggesting they're wrongly stalling or trying to block the stepped-up deportations.
They're deranged is all I can think of. I cannot believe. I think some of these judges think they are beyond and above the law, and they are not.
But there's already pushback on the way Dugan was arrested, said to have been by multiple law enforcement officers. The arrest documents describe the scene inside the courthouse, and evidence suggesting Dugan did indeed try to help Ruiz escape federal agents. He'd been deported once before and was in court facing domestic violence charges. But Protesters worry that in seeming to make a show of her arrest, regardless of what she did, federal authorities aim to intimidate other judges to ensure none stand in the way of future deportations.
Judge Hannah Dugan's arrest is not just about her, right? This is about striking fear in the heart of the judiciary across the entire country.
But the U.S. Attorney General is having none of it, underlining any obstruction of justice, no matter by who, will not be tolerated. Judge Dugan's lawyer said in a statement, Dugan regrets and protests her arrest and will defend herself vigorously. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Despite continuing Russian attacks on Ukraine, Donald Trump says the two sides are very close to a peace deal after his envoy met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow.
How are you, Mr. President?
Fine, just fine, thank you.
How are you? So good to see you.
Former real estate developer and Trump confidant Steve Witkoff has now met with Putin 4 times since February. Trump today continued to pressure Kyiv to surrender its territory to Russia and sign an agreement giving the U.S. access to Ukraine's natural resources. Just as Witkoff arrived in Moscow, about 30 kilometers away, a car bomb exploded, killing a Russian general. A similar attack killed another general in the Moscow area in December, which was later claimed by Ukraine's security service. Leaders from around the world are in Italy tonight ahead of the funeral for Pope Francis. Among them, a diverse Canadian delegation. Chris Brown is in Rome, hearing their stories about an engaging leader.
In St. Peter's Basilica, on the final day for viewing Pope Francis's open coffin, there was unmistakable emotion, with sadness, but also appreciation for the many he helped in his life. Among those was Métis leader David Chartrand from Manitoba. He met the Pope in 2022 when Francis made a historic apology to Canadian residential school survivors.
Nothing was going to stop me from praying, so I had a chance to look at him and bow to him and thank him for everything he's done for us.
More than 50 world leaders and reigning monarchs will be here for Saturday's funeral, including Donald Trump, who flew out Friday. Canada's delegation will include diplomat Joyce Napier, who recalled the Pope gave her some Catholic books when they were introduced 10 months ago.
And then he paused and he said to me, you can read them. Or, you know, if you have a table that's a little bit unbalanced, you can use it to balance your table. It took a few seconds. I kind of look at him. You can't imagine that the Pope would be, you know, cracking a joke, but he did.
By sunset, with the visitation ended, St. Peter's Square was emptied in preparation for the funeral.
Francis's funeral will be unique for popes. Not only will it be held outside, it will involve a procession out of St. Peter's Square and through the streets of Rome.
The procession will end 6 kilometers away at St. Mary Major Basilica, where the Pope's tomb has been prepared, in a church that was special to him, says this Vatican watcher.
Before and after every single international trip he did, he would go there and pray in front of the icon of Mary that's called Salus Populi Romani, health of the Roman people. And he said himself that he wanted to be buried there, to be close to that icon, so that Mary can be with him on his final journey.
With the crowds gone, the Pope's face was covered with a white silk veil and his coffin sealed, ready for the final goodbye. Chris Brown, CBC News, Rome.
CBC News will have full coverage of the Pope's funeral, hosted by Heather Hiscox at the Vatican. You can catch that anywhere you watch CBC News, starting in just a few hours from now at 3 a.m. Eastern. After trying to save its final 6 stores, Hudson's Bay is now liquidating all locations.
I feel really sad. My mother used to work here.
The reaction from shoppers and workers at Canada's oldest company. Plus, amid the U.S. trade war, the concerns about a push to expand Canada's LNG exports.
It's simply too much of a risk.
And how the late Pope Francis changed the life of a musician now in Canada.
Who knows where I would be now if that hadn't happened.
We're back in 2. This was the scene outside a Manhattan courthouse today as Luigi Mangione pleaded not guilty to federal charges in the killing of health insurance executive Brian Thompson. Prosecutors are seeking the death penalty in the case. The last of the Hudson's Bay stores are officially going out of business. Canada's oldest company tried to spare 6 locations from liquidation, including its flagship location in Toronto. But as Sophia Harris explains, selling them off is its only way forward.
Good morning, guys. Good morning.
Many hoped it wouldn't come to this.
What you get? I got a towel from the bay.
6 Hudson's Bay stores, previously spared, including this one, have joined the liquidation sales after the cash-strapped company failed to find them a buyer.
I feel really sad. My mother used to work here.
This could mean the end of Hudson's Bay, as all 96 locations, including Saks brand stores, are now slated to close by mid-June.
When I first came here, this is one of my best stores, so I'm shocked that this has happened.
It's also unwelcome news for Hudson's Bay's more than 9,000 employees, including workers at this Bay online distribution center, who now know it's likely no jobs will be spared.
People's lives have been turned upside down. People made plans, and those plans are just ruined right now. It's devastating for everybody here and also in all the stores.
The retailer may not disappear entirely. There are multiple offers for a segment of the business, so a new, smaller version could emerge, perhaps one which monetizes those iconic stripes.
I think that there's a little bit of latitude to take that sort of HBC logo and put it on more merchandise. The brand still has a lot of affinity, and it has incredible heritage.
That incredible heritage includes thousands of historical artifacts, many of which Hudson's Bay plans to put up for auction. Preservationists hope some notable items, like this royal charter from 1670, establishing Hudson's Bay, won't wind up in a private collection.
The Royal Proclamation Charter is perhaps one of the most important documents in Canadian history. This is something that should belong in public hands.
On Thursday, Hudson's Bay got court approval to go ahead with its auction. The retailer has yet to reveal which historical items will be up for sale and has been directed to consult with concerned parties before finalizing its list. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
With just days until the federal election, voters are weighing the issues in Quebec's largest riding.
The price of the food, Trump.
More from voters and the candidates in Val-d'Or, Quebec. And how the war in Gaza could impact the election.
Who is really supporting Gaza as much as possible? That's my main issue.
The National breaks down the stories shaping our world next. With the final vote of the federal election just days away, a hotly contested battle is shaping up in Quebec's largest riding. Polls suggest a Liberal surge in a riding that is often up for grabs. Vanessa Lee explains why the Bloc Québécois incumbent says it's important her party keeps it.
Considered the gateway to northern Quebec, in a region known for mining and forestry, many voters are undecided on candidates, but decisive on the issues.
It's more expensive. It's not a big town.
The price of the food, Trump.
The city of Val-d'Or is just one part of the vast Abitibi-Baie-James-Nunavik EU riding, which is the largest in Quebec. The distance to the northern tip is 1,500 kilometers. And the riding is diverse. While it's predominantly Francophone, 1 in 4 people speaks an Indigenous language. The goal of the Native Friendship Center is to support that growing population.
We have a shortage in housing. Definitely that's an issue, and homelessness is an issue. All parties, we didn't hear about those aspects as much as we should have.
Politically, the riding has a history of shifting loyalties. Sylvie Bérubé won the seat vacated by the NDP's Romeo Saganash, who poached it from the Bloc in 2011 during the Orange Wave. She is looking to be re-elected for a 3rd term. If we don't defend the interests of Quebec, who will? Federal money always ends up elsewhere, she says. Polls suggest Bérubé will be neck and neck with Mandy Golmasti, the first female Grand Chief of the Cree Nation government in Quebec. She resigned from her position to run for the Liberals, who are on track to steal seats from the Bloc with the surge of Canadian pride.
The issue is economy. So does this riding want to have a voice that represents them with the capacity to bring change? Or is it going to be, a vote for another party that may or may not even form the opposition?
What's expected to be a tight race in a province that could swing the election. Vanessa Lee, CBC News, Val d'Or, Quebec.
Now it's time to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world. Tonight, tariff impacts on Canada's LNG debate and Middle East impacts on how some Canadian Muslims may vote. Canadians head to the ballot box in just a few days, and for Canadian Muslims, the war in Gaza could recalibrate their votes.
Underestimating the Muslim vote can be pretty detrimental.
Farah Nasser breaks down the impact in the vote-rich suburbs outside Toronto. But first,
Canada can be the #1 exporter of LNG to Asia.
the trade war has put Canada's natural gas industry on the front burner. Some call it an immense opportunity, but there's fear it's all moving too fast.
It's simply too much of a risk.
Lindsay Duncombe breaks down the high-stakes race to get Canadian LNG to global markets.
Burning off British Columbia's north coast, hope that Canada's largest private infrastructure project ever is the first step in an energy economy that doesn't rely on the United States.
Canada can be the #1 exporter of LNG to Asia.
I will guarantee decisions on major projects within a maximum of 1 year.
That push, though, is sparking fear. Worries that industry could move too fast, putting the climate and communities at risk.
It's about ensuring that not every company gets a yes.
Earlier this month, the Greek tanker Roxana made its way through the Douglas Channel to Kitimat. People lined up to watch the arrival. Among them,
and let me tell you, it was a big moment for me as a Canadian.
Teresa Waddington, a vice president with LNG Canada.
That carrier represents a huge amount of work and a huge milestone in our project, and it gets us ready for that really the next big milestone, which will be our first export cargo sometime in the middle of 25.
The tanker is delivering liquefied natural gas, or LNG. It will be used to test all the systems at Canada's first ever LNG export terminal.
A generational opportunity, not just for British Columbia, but for all of Canada.
A joint venture of 5 global energy companies, built with the support of successive governments and First Nations. When testing is done, ships will take LNG the other way, exporting Canadian LNG to markets in Asia for the very first time, generating hundreds of millions of dollars every year.
And it is going to diversify Canada's energy export market, allowing us to reach different sales locations for our natural gas. Certainly, Canadian gas offers a whole new opportunity.
Natural gas is a fossil fuel, mostly methane. It's invisible, lighter than air, often extracted through a controversial process called fracking. Water and sand are pushed deep into the earth, breaking up rock, releasing the gas to be transported by pipeline. Terminals like the one at Kitimat take that gas, cool it, and ship it. Burning LNG causes fewer emissions than coal or oil, but it takes a lot of energy to produce.
As big as this terminal is, there are plans to expand. Phase 2 would double the capacity. That's just one of many projects governments and industry want to see built, and fast.
In British Columbia alone, there are at least 5 potential LNG projects at various stages of approval. The Conservatives are all in on LNG.
We have enormous advantages over the Americans, the Qataris, and countless others.
From the Liberals, promises of expansion too.
Projects that diversify our export markets so we rely less on the United States.
Bay Street's excited.
I believe Canada can be the #1 exporter of LNG to Asia.
Just listen to TC Energy CEO Francois Poilievre. His company built the pipeline that sends gas to LNG Canada.
Canada is energy rich and has the potential to be an energy superpower.
Okay, let's get as many people in as we can.
There's even buzz about Canadian LNG at the London Stock Exchange in England.
Everybody turn sideways. Got you good?
That's where we met Crystal Smith. She's chief of the Hudson Nation, the nation that partnered with corporations to build that first export terminal in Kitimat.
It was a long process to be able to build that relationship to the point we currently have right now. But we saw an opportunity.
She's speaking on a panel about Cedar LNG, the nation's own project. The floating facility will use gas from the same pipeline as LNG Canada.
We are the largest majority Indigenous owned project of its kind, I believe, in the world.
Smith says the trade war is creating opportunity.
Although it's not a great scenario for Canadians to be experiencing, it is an opportunity for Canadians to realize exactly the wealth that we have in our natural resources and to be able to capitalize on them.
Talking about the project here lets her challenge the idea that Indigenous communities oppose big energy projects.
I think there is a lot of misconception when it comes to any type of industrial project or any type of development where there's Indigenous opposition. Unfortunately, we're all grouped into one perception, which isn't the case.
This is sovereign Wet'suwet'en land. You are trespassing.
This, though, may be what many remember when they think of natural gas projects in Canada. Blockades, arrests.
I can't imagine anywhere else in the world where they built something like this.
All in opposition to this. LNG Canada gets its gas from the Coastal GasLink pipeline, 670 kilometers long. The massive project had the support of elected First Nations leaders, but not the hereditary leadership of the Wet'suwet'en. Its resistance to the pipeline sparked protests across Canada. The RCMP's response prompted international condemnation.
So the Coastal GasLink pipeline, we learned that companies will do whatever it takes. They will bring in militarized police and they will remove Indigenous people from their lands.
Tara Marsden is the sustainability director for the Gitnell Hereditary Chiefs.
Who can we rely on to protect our territories except for ourselves?
She works with a group of young people opposed to a new LNG pipeline in their traditional territory.
And so we put it on this big sign.
They worry the project will harm salmon habitat and accelerate climate change.
In 2025, facing a climate crisis and facing a lot of cumulative impacts from development, it's simply too much of a risk.
They oppose the Prince Rupert gas transmission line. It would run 800 kilometers to a planned terminal on a coastal island. The project has the support of the Nisga'a, a neighboring nation, partnering with American energy company Western LNG.
So this isn't about getting out from under the thumb of the Americans.
She worries about the push to move fast on LNG, concerned that the trade war will sideline environmental concerns.
It's about ensuring that not every company gets a yes, because just because a company wants to do something, it doesn't mean all the communities have to get on board. There are some projects that are sustainable and some projects that aren't.
LNG Canada says it's proud of the efforts it took to make Canada's first export terminal sustainable and accepted by the community.
When you hear that there's this desire to build LNG infrastructure quickly, can you do that quickly at the same time as building those relationships you talk about?
That's a really difficult question to answer, and I'd say that it depends. But just like a relationship, I can't tell you if the right time before you marry someone is 2 years of dating or 2 months of dating.
The accelerated push to export LNG will put communities and the country on a speed date with industry, a relationship that could prove volatile, lucrative, or both.
On environmental concerns Lindsay reported on, LNG Canada says work will continue to enhance local fish habitat as it looks to deliver its first exports by mid-2025. Still ahead, the issues top of mind for some of Canada's Muslim voters ahead of Monday's vote.
Most important is, I feel, the immigration.
Honestly, work-related taxes.
Definitely affordability.
We break down the issues and why, for some, political allegiances are shifting. That's next. After decades of leaning liberal, Muslim Canadian support may be shifting.
I bleed the liberal. You know, we are hurt by the Liberal Party.
Why the Gaza conflict could reshape how they cast their vote, and why it could be crucial to the outcome on April 28th. Farah Nasser breaks down how the war in Gaza may be changing the votes of some Canadian Muslims.
This is Ridgeway Plaza in Mississauga in the vote-rich 905. And this plaza is filled with Muslim shops and halal restaurants, one of the largest of its kind in North America. Muslim Canadians have traditionally voted Liberal, at least for the past 2 decades. But this time around, that might not be a sure thing. And it's not hard to see why.
Who is really supporting Gaza as much as possible? That's my main issue.
Well, Palestine is one, for sure.
They're not calling it what it is, which is a genocide.
There's so much at stake here.
Umair Ashraf and Reem Sheet, leaders from 2 non-partisan Muslim advocacy groups, say the issues become a deal breaker for many of Canada's 1 million Muslim voters.
I went to Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Toronto, and Ottawa, and I had a chance to sit down with the community, and we were just discussing with them about, okay, what matters to you? And Palestine was front and center every single time.
Really?
Each
so that
city,
was the number one
topic across the country.
Recently, Muslim voter turnout has been higher than the national average, and this time we might even see more engagement in a Canada that has seen a significant increase in Islamophobic incidents.
For me, like, I'm a mom, and I'm thinking, you know, I want my child to be able to grow up in a space where if she chose to wear hijab or if she wanted to pray, she's allowed to do that and she has the comfort and freedom to do so. So I think we're definitely more aware now.
This is the first federal election since Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel and Israel's deadly offensive in Gaza.
There's a genocide happening in Palestine.
Yet on the campaign trail, this humanitarian crisis remains a political third rail for Liberal leader Mark Carney.
I will not, and I will never, politicize that word or this situation.
While the Conservatives reiterate their support for Israel,
My closing message on this to Canada's Jewish community is you are not alone.
the political calculus for the NDP has been to show Muslim voters that Liberals aren't on their side.
You've not acknowledged that what's going on in Gaza is now clearly become a genocide.
Canada's largest Middle Eastern halal restaurant chain, Paramount Fine Foods, has been a regular photo op for the Liberals. Its owner, Mohammed Faki, has been a big Liberal backer for decades. Is this the first time you're voting NDP?
It's my first time voting NDP.
I have struggled with this issue.
Faki says his MP and personal friend, Anita Anand, refused to sign a pledge supporting Palestinian rights.
I believe in the right of every group, every religion, and every culture within our country.
She framed the pledge as fueling anti-Semitism. And while he thinks Carney is the best option available for Muslims, since Faki lives in what he considers a safe Liberal riding, he voted against them to send a message.
Our children are watching how we're being treated here in Canada just for saying ceasefire. I'm telling you, I lived all my political life as a Liberal. I bleed the Liberal. You know, we are hurt by the Liberal Party.
York University assistant professor Nadia Hassan studies politics and Islamophobia. She says Muslims live in dozens of swing ridings where their vote could have a defining role.
Underestimating the Muslim vote can be pretty detrimental to a political campaign. So one example of that is Lisa Raitt.
Milton is blessed with a great diverse Indo-Canadian population.
In 2019, the then deputy leader of the Conservatives lost to political novice and former Olympian Adam Van Koeverden.
In the lead up to that, we can see a number of issues that rubbed the Muslim community the wrong way.
Raitt and some other conservatives criticized a symbolic motion condemning Islamophobia in the House of Commons. And she admits her Liberal rivals spent a lot of time gaining the community's trust.
I lost their confidence and I lost their vote.
Just months ago, Vice President Kamala Harris watched her presidential dreams crumble in the key battleground state of Michigan, where Muslim voters, disillusioned by her staunch pro-Israel stance, didn't turn up for her. Back at Ridgeway Plaza, there are other concerns leading these voters to the ballot box, too.
Most important is, I feel, the immigration.
Honestly, work-related taxes.
Definitely affordability.
Being a young Muslim voter, I'm concerned about Islamophobia.
Have you decided who you're voting for?
Honestly, no.
Aisha Abdul-Razak is a first-time voter.
I think foreign policy dictates the way that we run our lives here as well, right? Because the way that they view anyone back home is the same way that they're going to view me. Because just because I live here doesn't make me any different to them. So I don't see it as, oh, that's back home and that's here, or that's abroad and that's the Middle East. Those are the problems of the Middle East. I think it goes hand in hand, to be honest.
As this election campaign comes to a close, some Muslim voters could be choosing principle over party loyalty.
Now, Farah, as we enter into the final days of the election, what can the federal parties do to turn the Muslim vote in their favor?
Erica, in short, a tougher stance on the war. Now, Muslim communities, we should point out, aren't monolithic, and we don't know how they're going to vote. But what's been interesting in covering the story is, while many in both Muslim and Jewish communities disagree on the situation in the Middle East, the one thing many agree on is that the Liberals have let them down on this issue this election. Over the last week, we've brought you two stories of how this conflict is playing out in both voting blocs. We heard from some Jewish voters who are now supporting the Conservatives for the first time because they also feel disappointed by the Liberals. Erica?
Okay, thanks for this, Farah. And another story we're working on, U.S. dealerships are seeing a surge in new car sales as drivers rush to get ahead of pending tariffs. David Common hears from buyers and dealers in Detroit, the heart of the U.S. auto industry.
It's a big day and a big expense for any family.
I'm here to pick up my new car, Grand Highlander. I'm super excited. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
But Jerry Chen tells us this purchase was supposed to happen months from now. The threat of tariffs, though, sped it up.
Thank you. I shouldn't have to worry about, oh man, the car might go up, or a new phone might cost more, a computer might cost more, just because of, politics.
You can watch David's full story in the coming days right here on The National. Up next, the Winnipeg musician who credits Pope Francis for changing her life.
Who knows where I would be now if that hadn't happened.
All thanks to a letter he wrote 16 years ago. That story in our moment. This is Winnipeg musician Ona Liu. She grew up in Argentina, where she knew Pope Francis back when he was a cardinal. Now, years later, she's looking back at the impact he had on her life and her career, all thanks to a letter. The story of that pivotal gesture makes our moment.
I saw in person Pope Francis a few times when he was cardinal in Argentina. He would come to the church where I was part of the youth groups, and it was always very refreshing to hear him talk. When I was studying classical composition at Catholic University, I was drowning in student loans, and this friend of my mom, she would tell my mom, why don't you ask him, he's always helping people. One day she went, and 2 days later they called my mom to come and pick up this support letter. I remember the excitement, I cannot believe it. I have this letter from the cardinal to ask for a scholarship. I got a scholarship for the last 2 years to finish my music degree in Argentina. Who knows where I would be now if that hadn't happened. It was, I think, the first great turn my life took.
just go ask the future Pope for a letter of reference. Ona Lu moved to Winnipeg in 2017. She just finished a tour in southern British Columbia. She's working on her third album to be released next year. And in 2023, she was nominated for Global Artist of the Year at the Western Canadian Music Awards. Not bad. Thank you for being with us tonight. You can watch us anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app or subscribe to the National's YouTube channel. I'm Erica Johnson in Vancouver. Take care.